I would see things on the multiple levels. So I would see myself looking down at myself. And what's crazy is it was almost like the roof got taken off of wherever we were. And I could see like the floor plan of the house. And then I would be like watching everybody in the house, whatever they were doing, but like peaked, like tethered to myself almost, but still being able to see like a vast view of everything and every energy that was in the home. And then I would tether out further and I could see, an example, the one that I'm seeing right now is like my apartment complex. And then, would keep tethering out and out and out. And then it would just be like, I could see the world. I could see me in space. And then you keep going out further and further and further. And, you connect to source and you connect to, universal connection and light consciousness and, Christ consciousness and source consciousness, whatever you want to call it, because everybody sees it as something so different. And I believe that all is correct because we all experience this world differently.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Let Thy Single Eye Be Still. My name is Travis Cosentino, and with me today is Candice Lee. Hi, Candice. How are you doing today?
Beautiful. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you. So, what was it like for you growing up?
Getting deep. I was always a very happy, playful little kid. I loved to be in all things. I loved to be the star of the show. For the most part, I would say I had a pretty good upbringing.
What was your spiritual upbringing?
My mom let me be pretty open. At one point, she did have us go to church a lot, and I did get baptized within the church of Christianity at one point. And then, my dad remarried his ex-wife now, who was Mormon, and she tried to push that on me a lot, and I just didn't resonate with it and kind of refused to accept that. And, as I got older, I kind of just followed what I felt like resonated with me. And, I listen a lot to, universal synchronicities, and I listen a lot to my intuition, and I enjoy connecting with Mama Earth. And I believe in all things and everything. I don't think that it's just one thing. So once I started approaching kind of my teenage years, started dating and wasn't really directed in the best way relationship wise when it came to what I was shown as a child. So I, went on this route of, well, nobody can tell me anything. I'm just going to figure it out myself. So I started dating and doing all of these things and wound up in a not so good relationship. And within this relationship, started getting into the experiments of drugs, and within that process, I feel like it really opened my eyes up to a lot of things that I wasn't seeing for what they were, I guess. I had been living in like such a state of unconsciousness almost. It was like I would be sitting there and like we would all be sitting around, and like all of a sudden, like in my mind, I would be watching conversations about to happen or like something about to happen, and then all of a sudden it would be happening. And then I'm sitting here and I'm like, is everybody else experiencing this too? Like, is it just me? Like, what is happening in a sense? And, and it just kind of trickled. Like I would feel someone's energy, and then all of a sudden, like their energy would like show itself in like a physical form. Like I would feel like that their soul was like very, very angry or something like that. And then like all of a sudden the way that they were speaking, like their demeanor would be very, very angry. And I'm like, wow, that matches. Like, and I would just start picking up on all of these little tiny hints and clues and like things of these people. And, I was going deeper and deeper into that process, want to call it a spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it in that process. When you're experiencing something at such a young age as a child, especially a teenager, and you're not educated on what is going on in the process and or everybody around you may be experiencing it and also has no idea, makes it a little bit harder of a process. So I think within that process, I started causing myself to kind of like spiral and be like, I don't want any of this. Like, I don't want to tap into this. Like, this doesn't seem like reality and da 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 da. And I feel like in that process, I was stuffing down like a part of myself and a part of my soul that I was really, really deeply connected with. And in that process, I specifically remember being like drawn out of my body and being like looking over like the whole situation and the process of it, and being like almost feeling like I was being taken away from the situation to look at it at a bigger picture. And yet at the same time, it felt like old parts of me were dying and like new parts of me were coming in, and like just all of these weird things that were all accumulating all at once, right? I would see things on the multiple levels. So I would see myself looking down at myself. And what's crazy is it was almost like the roof got taken off of wherever we were, and I could see like the floor plan of the house. And then I would be like watching everybody in the house, whatever they were doing, but like peaked, like tethered to myself almost, but still being able to see like a vast view of everything and every energy that was in the home. And then I would tether out further and I could see, you know, an example, the one that I'm seeing right now is like my apartment complex. And then, you know, would keep tethering out and out and out. And then it would just be like, you know, I could see the world. I could see me in space. And then you keep going out further and further and further. And, you know, you connect to source and you connect to, you know, universal connection and light consciousness and, you know, Christ consciousness and source consciousness, whatever you want to call it, because everybody sees it as something so different. And I believe that all is correct because we all experience this world differently. Most of the time that was kind of how I would experience it. And it was like in those moments where I was connected with source, I was either having conversations with my ancestors or guides or, you know, God or whatever connection it was. I feel like there was different things every time, and there was a lot of times where I was connecting with my higher self. You're not done here, like you need to go back. Like that was a lot of things that I would hear, like there's still something you need to learn. Like you just keep throwing back, like it would just be little messages that I would get in the process of it.
So this is not the first time I've heard this before, but
yeah,
it's
and
not.
so that would happen like multiple times. Like this wasn't just a one-time occurrence. You know, every single time I would take experiment with drugs or whatever the case, like it would happen every single time. And I'm like, you know, what is going on? Like, what could this be? Like, am I being shown that like this isn't my life? Like I need to be doing something else with my life. Why am I being so resistant? Like just all of these things, you know. And I remember there was one time specifically that like I really felt myself like just kept going and going and going, and I like almost went. I think that's my baby.
What was that?
I almost went to she's shaking my door, sorry. I almost went to the light, and I just remember like being like, I don't really need this. Like this, I need to be in my body. Like that's where I need to be. And I just remember being like shot back down into my body, into where I was. And with that brought like more awareness to, one, show me that what I was doing and the people that I were with like was not the situation that I was supposed to be in, that I was supposed to be doing other things with my life. And you know, the abuse that was going on and the things that were happening to me that really, really were affecting my soul at that time. And it was like every single time I went into that out of body experience, I would come back with like another lesson or like reasoning on like why I was supposed to be here on this earth, and yet still needed to leave the situation that I was in so that I could keep going to like do all that I want to do in my life.
It's crazy to me because you're having out of body experiences that people have been trying to do for years, and you just popping in and out like it's like you're just getting out of a chair, you know? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, and,
it's
like,
pretty
now I can
wild.
do it like it's and I still do it. Like, it took me a really long time because, like I said, I didn't understand what I was going through. Like, it put me in a really, really weird state because once I left that situation, I'm going through this experience and I'm like, is everybody else experiencing this? Like, am I the only one experiencing this? What is the message? And, like, at that point, after I had left that situation, I went to rehab and I did all of these things for myself to get myself more aligned so that I can be in a space to where, like, I can be myself, like, and I wasn't myself, with those people and in those situations and those things. And so within going to rehab, because I was a minor, they were stuffing me with medications and putting me on prescription after prescription after prescription after prescription because they're like, oh well, we can't explain what's going on with you, like you're just anxious and depressed and you don't know what's going on, you're a child, and we're just going to keep heavily medicating you and medicating you and medicating you. And I wasn't taking that as an answer. That's just not the person that I am. So, once I turned 18, I was like, I got switched to adult services and I was like, this isn't serving me. You guys aren't helping me. You're just medicating me. You're not helping me figure out, what it is, what the meaning of life is or what my meaning of life is or whatever the case, whatever it was at that time. I was 18. I don't really know. And I just remember them telling me that, if you get off these medications, you're just going to spiral downhill and you're never going to come out. And I'm just like, watch me
Wow, they
never,
said that?
never. Yeah, a doctor said that to me. And I was like, watch me never spiral again. I was like, because if you're not going to help me take myself off this medication, like I'm going to do it myself and I'm going to come out and you guys are going to reap it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so
That is so, so fascinating. So I want to kind of take a couple steps back because I have some questions.
yeah,
Um, so you discovered in your teens that you were empathic, basically, right?
yeah,
You were picking up on people's energies and you were picking up on what was going on, basically. And
yeah.
so that kind of freaked you out, and you're like, this isn't normal.
Yeah, and I think because we were experimenting with the things that we were, it was just so heightened that it brought like such an awareness to like who I was as a person and like all of the stuff that I had taken that people have taken advantage of me for and I had let slip or like whatever the case, like it just brought like whole new awareness to myself, which is really a lot for a person at that age, especially with no guidance whatsoever. So yeah, so it definitely caused a big spiral in me to go down the darker parts of life. But I think that ultimately allowed me to like embrace my shadows and embrace the shadow parts of life so that I can understand the duality of it all.
That's really cool. I'm actually an empath myself, so I can totally relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I didn't figure it out till I was probably like 35, believe it or not. It took me
Yeah.
forever to figure out that I had any kind of psychic intuition or anything like that. And actually, what's really cool is the fact that I didn't discover truly my abilities until I had done hypnotherapy. Thank you. I don't know
Welcome.
why I couldn't even say the words, but yeah, that is what helped me discover that I even had psychic abilities to begin with. So
Yeah.
that's really
Hypnotherapy
cool.
is so good for unlocking like any type of potential within you. It's amazing work.
It really is, and not only that, but it helped me discover who I was, parts of myself that made sense because for a long time I kind of wondered why I had certain gifts and things, and now I know and understand because of they're based off of past lives that I've experienced. And yeah, I mean, never would have been able to know that unless had gone into a deep, beta theta wave trance and
Mhm.
had somebody sort of read into that for me. So there
Yes.
really is something to this practice, and I really encourage viewers, if you're interested in doing something like this, to definitely reach out with Candice and to do something like this. But let's go ahead and move forward with this out of body. What was the part of you that changed that you didn't recognize?
I feel like this is such a multi-layered question because, like, I also like saw the darker parts of me that still needed to like be embraced and honored in a way. We all have darker sides of ourselves, whether it be like anger or get into addictive habits or codependency situations, or let our ego come into play to where we become narcissistic or have narcissistic tendencies, or become people pleasers. Like, I feel like the shadow parts of ourselves are so broad. Not only that, but we have like the darker parts of ourselves when we don't embrace the light that we are as humans. My mom was an exotic dancer my whole life and was that dark feminine, but it was a shadow aspect of the feminine of us. Growing up in that type of industry, is a little conflicting because yes, it is about empowerment, but it's about like a deeper, darker shadow of empowerment.
It's so interesting how you talked about connecting with source and how you said it, because it made it sound like it was just something that came very natural to you and you didn't even really think about it. And it was wild because you're talking about pulling yourself away and you're looking at it like a floor plan. And I immediately just go to that old PC game called Sims, where you're in a third person and
And
you
I've
see
never played that game.
You've never played Sims? It's actually a pretty fun game. So
I've never played it. My best friend, she was obsessed with it, and like she still like talks about it here and there from time to time, and like, but I never played with it. I was
well,
never into video games or anything like that. So
oh well, you're kind of living your own video game anyways. So when you were out of your body and you were looking at your body and looking at your spirit and looking at your life experiences, it was almost like you were kind of operating on yourself. The reason I say that is because you were healing yourself, you were healing aspects of yourself, and you were helping yourself rediscover who you truly are.
yeah,
And I think that ultimately we all should want to get to a point in our lives where we can do that, where
yeah,
we all can individually, kind of just step out of the body and be connected with source and look at the body and be able to say, okay, this is really where I need to work because I can see on my body where this darkness is at, you know. And I think that with what you're doing in your business with these out of body, but they're hypnotherapy sessions, is probably the safest way for somebody who really struggles with connecting with that spiritual part of themselves.
yeah, yeah. So like I said, when I was shutting on and off that switch, it made it to where I caused my own little spiral in myself spiritually, because I was able to just flip it on and off whenever I wanted. And that really isn't counterproductive to yourself or to anybody. And it came to a point to where I had absolutely had enough and went through, I want to call it, either quarter life mid crisis, a second spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it in that moment. And just remember sitting there, like relearning everything in that moment. At this second spiritual awakening, I was about 26.
Mhm.
I had stuffed down my gifts again, ignored them, had a child, what wasn't really following the path that I wanted to have for myself again, because we like to repeat our lessons until we learn them. I'm very good at that. I feel like anybody is very good at that. Um, but that's how we learn. And within that process, I remember sitting there and I remember like relearning everything again. And I was like, there has to be a way that you can teach this to people. there has to be a way that this has to be something. And then it was in that moment when my school started popping up in my horizon, and I again ignored it for a little while, but finally decided to join that school, and it trickled into everything that my practice is now. And what's really funny is I was again hesitant to start school. I had taken a class and it took me a whole year to sign up. And it took a psychic telling me where my GED was because I couldn't find it. I couldn't find my GED for like a year. I was like, I can't sign up because I can't find my GED. And this psychic's like, what are you talking about? It's in your drawer. And I was like, no, it's not. You're not gonna do this to me right now because I've looked. I know exactly what you're talking about and it's not in there. And he's like, yeah, it is. Check again. And I went home and I opened it and I opened my little folder and there it was. And I was like, I'm being punked by the universe. Like I'm literally this. I was like, where's the cameras? Because this is a joke. Did someone take my GED out and then put it back in? Like I literally was just like flabbergasted. So needless to say, the next day I signed up for school and I embarked on the journey that I went on to tap into these parts of you without needing, substances and things within the process, and still being able to help someone in that journey. Because like I said, I was a young teenager going through something that I wish I would have had the resources and tools to be able to accomplish, to where, but again, I had to learn all of the things to get to where I am today. So everything is a blessing in disguise ultimately.
Beautiful. So true. So true. So first, at the end of this interview, when we're done, I would love to get the name of that psychic because that's impressive.
Shocking. I was like, are you kidding me? Who are you connected to? Because that's not fair.
That's wild.
I was so mad. But I mean, like, look, yeah, it was impressive.
That's amazing. Okay, yeah, I definitely want the name of that psychic. And then you've been doing this for 5 years now. And what would you say is your most profound experience that you've had doing hypnotherapy for others?
One of my favorites right now is I have a client and I'm working with them with germophobia. And they've had severe germophobia since 2020, which rightfully so. We went through something really, really crazy during that time. And it rippled an effect within him. And, I've been working with him for a few weeks now, and to see the shifts within him to where he wasn't even able to go outside. And a couple weeks ago, he took a 5 mile walk, and doesn't even like hasn't even put like two to two together that that's such a big thing for him. Like, and like just like major shifts like that in people, that just like it's like a little switch, that little switch that I was talking about. It's like a little switch just turns on, and sometimes they're not even conscious that the switch has turned on yet. And so it's fun to watch older parts of somebody or patterns that didn't serve them or were never a part of them just kind of like float off and go away.
So this is, like I said, it's such a beautiful story because you went through all of these wild things, but in the end, you decided to help others by doing this hypnotherapy, and I love that. I really do. You're providing a great service to people that might not otherwise be able to overcome something like the germophobia, which is a really big thing.
Yeah.
There's a really famous actor. He's a comedian, or he was a comedian, and I think he's on America's Got Talent or one of those TV shows. And yeah, he's been a huge germaphobe his whole life. So maybe he should see you.
There's potential.
Can't
There's
remember his
potential
name.
there.
Yeah. What would you recommend somebody doing if they wanted to get into hypnotherapy?
The number one thing that I tell my clients is just an willingness, and a willingness to want to do the work. Our subconscious is so fascinating. And when we allow our subconscious the opportunity and the willingness to let it do what it wants to do in the healing process, it does amazing things.
Beautiful. That's perfect. And how can somebody find you?
I am all over social media. My Facebook is Miss Candice Lee. My TikTok is Miss Candice Lee. I have my business page, which is Sacred Healing Space, and then my Instagram as well. But you can find all of that online.
Well, I'll be sure to have that information down below if anybody wants to contact you. Thank you so much, Candice.
Absolutely. Have a blessed one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.